Hello and welcome to the Monroe Method Clancast. I'm Jason Monroe. This is episode 85. Today we are going to talk about hunger. When I work with my clients, I split eating up into two categories. But I call them two different things. So there is eating food and then there is using food. Eating food is how I describe when we eat in response to hunger, right? So it's breakfast time, you're hungry, you eat. It's lunchtime, you're hungry, you eat. It's dinner time, etc. Using food is for all your non-hunger related eating. So when you're snacking in between meals, when you've just finished your dinner but you're looking for something else. When we're at that point, we're no longer eating because we're now looking to use food for something that's outside of eating. And that's the part we need to understand. Because the way I see it is, if everybody just ate when they were hungry, stopped eating when they started to feel full, and then didn't eat until they were hungry again, combined with having a well-balanced diet, very few people would have trouble with their weight. The reason I say combined with a well-balanced diet is because if someone had a nutritionally poor diet and they ate every time they were hungry, they would be hungry quite a lot because they're not eating something that, if their diet lacks protein, if it lacks fiber, fruits, vegetables, somebody with a well-balanced diet can have a meal and then be full for 3 to 4 hours afterwards. People with a poor diet can have a meal and be hungry an hour later. So it has to be, when I say that, it has to be kind of combined with a healthy, balanced diet, or it doesn't work. If everybody had a 400 to 600 calorie breakfast, a 400 to 600 calorie lunch, and a 6 to 1,000 calorie dinner, that would be enough for most people's calorie requirements to land in the right place, and that would be it. They would live at a healthy weight. Meals generally tend not to be the problem. It's everything else. It's all the extras, the stuff that we just, not the stuff that we need, the stuff that we want. The biscuits, the crisps, the cakes, the snacks in between meals, the eating in front of the TV at night, the biscuits with the cups of tea, all the little extra things, those tend to be where all the unhelpful calories come from. And the more of these things that you do, the higher your weight's going to be. So we split it into two categories, right? And the reason it's important to do this is because we can then ask a very helpful question. So the angle that people come at this from is often trying to understand the desire to eat when not hungry. They try and kind of berate themselves, like, you've just had your dinner, you can't be hungry. You've just done this, you can't be hungry, or you shouldn't be hungry. And it's more of an argument with themselves, and they never come to a helpful conclusion. When I do check-ins with people, we go 2 weeks between check-ins. We don't do weekly check-ins because I don't find them very useful. Having someone focus on their progress every single week, I find can be very disheartening because not a lot can happen in a week. 2 weeks is awesome because when I sit down with someone after a fortnight, it doesn't matter what the scales have done during that time. If that person is 2.5 pounds lighter than they were the last time, it doesn't matter what's happened in between those 2 weeks. They are 2.5 pounds lighter over the last 2 weeks. What I see quite a lot is, when I look back at their weight, during the first week, it might have looked like they lost nothing. In the second week, they might have saw that 2.5 pound loss. Not because they didn't lose anything the one week and 2.5 the next, but because of the way the fat loss process works. Our bodies do not work to a 7-day schedule. The scales do not come down on day 7 every week. It's just not how we're built. So anyway, we do fortnightly check-ins. Whether it's a fortnightly check-in or a weekly check-in, you're still always at the end of a period of time looking backwards. So when I ask the questions in our kind of check-in template and they come back and start telling me, do you know what, on the first Friday, I overate. Now, it's helpful to pick that apart and ask questions about it. Like, the first thing I'll ask is, why did you overeat? And they'll go, I don't know. So we have to get them to paint a picture of, set the scene for me. What happened that day? What was it you were eating? Where were you? Paint the picture for me. And once they do that, they can give you a better answer. But the thing is, they're only looking at it as overeating now. They're only looking at it as overeating after the fact. When they were there at the time, they did not sit there and say, I am going to overeat. Oh, I'm going to eat this next thing. I'm going to keep overeating. It doesn't work like that. When we're in the moment, we're doing exactly what we want to do. We never sit there and go, I am doing too much of this. This is too much. As you put another piece of chocolate in your mouth, oh, I'm doing this too much. We don't think like that. There is a mindset that we have. There is something going on upstairs that is driving us to make these choices one after the other. And it's not until you're kind of beyond it, or it's a few hours later, or it's the next day or the next morning or a week later at a check-in, that you look back and go, that was too much. I ate too much that day. I drank too much that day. Or, maybe you've sat down to a meal, you've ordered a takeaway, you've had a Chinese, and, it's an hour later and you are feeling absolutely stuffed and you're like, I ate too much. I should have stopped. I should have stopped at the first plateful. I shouldn't have had the extra thing. And that's fine afterwards, but it doesn't help because the thing's done now. You can't change it. You can't undo the foods that you've eaten. You did it, and that's it. The goal then is to understand why you want to do the thing. Why did I do that in the first place? We need to get in there at the time. That's the key to being able to change these things. Not just looking at them from the future and trying to understand why you did it so you can change it for next time. Getting inside the moment and changing the moment, or at least starting to change the moment. And that happens by asking ourselves questions. We do not ask ourselves enough questions. We let ourselves away with far too much. I've often seen people say things like, I need someone to come and wire my jaws shut. I need someone to come live with me and make sure I don't eat things. They're always looking for that external thing, right? Something to come in and stop them from being who they are and eating the way that they eat. And it's a bit like that with check-ins, where it's, yes, we're checking in every fortnight, but then you've got to go for 2 weeks in between that. My clients can always reach out for help at any time, but in terms of proper check-ins, we do them on a fortnightly basis. So I need to get them round to a way of thinking to help them check in with themselves so that they can pause in that moment and reflect on it and understand what's happening. So if we come back to the hunger versus non-hunger eating, the eating and the using. So if it is outside of a mealtime, if you've just had something to eat, if you know full well that you're not hungry, but you still want something anyway, you've still got some kind of food thought going through your mind. You're still going to the cupboards or the fridge or wherever to try and find something to eat. Ask yourself this question. And this is much better than having the argument with yourself, like, I shouldn't be hungry. I've just had something to eat. Rather than arguing with yourself and trying to convince yourself that you shouldn't be there, come at it from the two separate mindset approach of eating and using. What am I using this food for? So you're in the cupboard, you're looking for biscuits, you're looking for crisps, you're looking for a cake. You're in the fridge, you're looking for cheese or whatever it is you're about to try and snack on. What am I using this food for? Because it's a very specific question that needs a very specific answer. So for example, if you went to get some sweets and I said, why are you going to get sweets? You might say, because they taste nice, because I fancy them. It's you can't, if I say, what are you using food for? You can't say, because I fancy it. That's not the correct answer. It's not the right answer to that question, right? What are you using that food for? Oh, because it tastes nice. That's not the right answer. It's very specific. What are you using this food for? I am using it because I am tired, because I am stressed, because I'm upset, because I'm lonely, because I'm bored, because I always have biscuits when I have a cup of tea. If you can get into the habit of asking yourself that question when you're going to make a non-hunger related food choice. Now, it might stop you from making that choice, and it might not. But it makes more sense to ask the question than it does to not ask it. And you can't just ask yourself this once and expect to find the answer. You need to ask yourself this every single time. Some people do much more non-hunger related eating than others. If you're carrying a higher level of body fat, you probably eat outside of hunger. pretty frequently, pretty regularly. Getting into the habit of asking yourself this question will teach you so much about yourself. If you go to make 5 choices in a day that aren't hunger related, and every single one of those times you say, what am I using this food for? You say, because I'm tired, because I'm tired, because I'm tired, 5 times. Right. Number 1, what do you learn about yourself? When I am tired, I look for this particular food. So what's the solution there? It's not using the food to try and cope with tiredness. Food does not solve tiredness. What solves, if I ask you the question, and this will sound stupid to ask this, what should you do if you're feeling tired? The obvious answer is sleep. Now, you cannot go for a nap 5 times a day every time you're using food. So what do you need to do? You need to address your sleep at night. I work on sleep with a lot of people. Do you know, when I first started working with the 10 private clients that I took on towards the end of 2022, every single one of them had screen time as an issue. Every single one of them. Something that I asked my private clients to do back then was paint a picture of what 24 hours look like. From the minute you wake up till the minute you close your eyes at night, leave nothing out. Every single one of them, the first thing they did in the morning was open their phone and start scrolling. The last thing they did at night before they closed their eyes was put their phone on charge after they'd been scrolling it before bed. They did not have good sleep hygiene, meaning that they weren't winding down for bed. They were going to bed. You might be going to bed at a sensible time, but what time are you actually going to sleep at? Going to bed at 9 sounds great, but if you're scrolling your phone to 10:30 at night, then trying to get to sleep, you fall asleep by 11, then you've got to be back up at 5 again. You're not getting enough sleep. If you're someone who drinks caffeine well into the afternoon, as many people do, I've realized this has been a hot topic inside the Monroe Method this week. Christ, I had somebody who was drinking coffee at 9 o'clock at night before they went to bed. And I didn't even ask this question. She mentioned something about improving her sleep. And she's like, I've tried to cut my caffeine down to like 2 in the afternoon or something. And I asked more like, how much coffee are you drinking? Oh, I'm having 4 or 5 cups in the morning. And I'm like, well, if you take those 4 or 5 cups and you add all the milligrams of caffeine together, by 9 o'clock at night, you're going to your bed with 2 cups of coffee in your system. You're drinking too much caffeine. Yes, you've cut it off early in the day. Caffeine has something called a half-life, where every 5 to 6 hours, the amount of caffeine in your bloodstream, amount of caffeine in your system reduces by half. And then 5 to 6 hours later, it reduces by half, etc., until the point where you have none. If you have 5 or 6 cups in the morning and however many 100 milligrams of caffeine that is, 5 or 6 hours later, it's cut in half. 5 or 6 hours later, it's cut in half again. So we worked out that she was going to bed with like 2 cups of coffee in her system. So not only did she work on having a cutoff point of midday, she's also reduced it to 2 to 3 cups in the morning to try and help with that. But when we spoke about it, she was like, I was having my last cup of coffee at like 8, 9 o'clock at night. And then wondering why she was having terrible sleep. So, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. When it comes to like tiredness, the solution is sleep. So when you get into the habit of asking yourself, what am I using this food for? I am using this food because I'm tired and I need a boost. Fine. Let's go backwards a bit. What's creating this tiredness? Well, I scroll my phone till midnight and then I have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so let's go back to the sleep. Let's not play, and it's not about trying to find foods to eat to boost you through tiredness. It's solving the actual problem, not trying to cope with the outcome of the problem. When you solve the problem, you don't need to cope with the outcome. Okay, so here's something that I do. Like, my phone doesn't come into the bedroom with me. When I go upstairs at night, my phone comes in here into my office and it goes on charge on my desk. And then I go upstairs. So there's no phones in the bedroom. When I go to bed, my brain knows that when I go in there, I'm going to do one of 2 things. And the thing I do most often is sleep, more often than the other thing. Yeah. So my brain knows that when I walk into the bedroom, it's ready to wind down for sleep. It is not time to put lights in front of your face, to scroll social media, to laugh at funny videos, to catch up on what's happening. It's bedtime. And it wasn't always like that. I used to be a terrible phone scroller. I used to wake up through the night and check notifications and check Facebook. You would, every time you woke up, you would check your phone. And it's funny because you think that you're checking your phone because of the waking up thing, but you can actually create this pattern where you're waking up to do the phone checking thing. And it's not until you don't have a phone in the bedroom that you realize that, because when I stopped taking my phone to the bedroom, I stopped waking up. Anyway, that's just me. So that's just one instance, right? There may be other instances. What am I using this food for? Because I'm happy, because I'm sad, because I'm stressed, because I'm anxious, because I'm looking for a distraction, because I've got something really important to do and I'm trying to procrastinate. You will only get these answers if you ask that question. And like I say, you need to ask it multiple times. Every time you find yourself in a position where you're about to make a non-hunger related food choice, what am I using this food for? And here's the thing, it's not always negative. Like, if you think about it, crisps, biscuits, chocolate, sweets, we should not be eating these things when we're hungry. Well, you shouldn't, at least. But if you eat cake, if you are hungry and you start eating cake, how much cake are you going to eat? How much cake's it going to take to get rid of that hunger? I had a chat with someone recently who said, why do I keep ordering dessert? I'm not hungry. I've just had dinner. Like, you're ordering it because you want it. No, she said, I ordered dessert even though I wasn't hungry. And I said, well, I would hope not. Like, you shouldn't be using dessert to help with hunger. When you combine hunger with a highly palatable food, that's often a recipe for disaster. Dessert is a choice. Chocolate is a choice. Sweets are a choice. You don't sit and eat Haribos because you're starving. You don't sit and eat chocolate because you've not had your lunch yet. If we're going to eat these things, we should be eating them more or less outside of hunger. It has to be a conscious choice so for example, like, I don't eat breakfast very often, maybe at the weekend sometimes, but I will typically have my lunch. I'll have an afternoon snack so that I'm not heading into dinner time too hungry, and then I'll have dinner, and then at night I'll have something in front of the TV, which will be something like a nice lolly, a pancake, or those little things I'm loving just now from Aldi, the little mini Victoria sponges, one of them, right? And now I don't have that thing at night because I'm hungry. I have it because I want it, because it tastes great. It's all right to make choices like that. But the problem is, there are people, I make a choice like that once per day. There are people who are making choices like that 10 times per day. That's why they have issues with their weight. It's why I used to have issues with my weight. Because when I worked in my old job, I took all my food with me. I also went to the canteen for lunch. I also went to the canteen for breakfast. And then in between times, purely out of boredom, I would go for a walk to the vending machine just to stretch my legs, because I had a very mind-numbing job. So I was using food back then to cope with boredom, to inject some excitement into my day, to make the day a bit more interesting. The knock-on effect of that was I became 14 and a half stone version of myself. Whereas now, it's very different. I don't stop myself from making these decisions. I'm just very aware that if I make lots of decisions like this, my weight will go back to a place that I don't want it to be. Therefore, if I don't want to be that weight, then I don't want to make those choices. Like I said before, in the last episode, I think, it's not that we're trying to restrict ourselves. It's not that we're trying to hold ourselves back. If that's the way that you're approaching your weight and your health, then there's something wrong and it's never going to last. You have to get to a point in life where the way that you want to live is what leads you to the weight that you want to be. Because that's what's led you to the weight that you want to be right now, right? Your eating habits, your drinking habits, your sleeping habits, your scrolling habits, all these things, they all add up together to take your weight to where it is right now. It is the culmination of the way that you live your life. To get things to go in a different direction, then we need to live differently. It's not about doing a list of things to get your weight to a place. It's changing the way that you live by adjusting the value that you place on your health, on your weight, on all these things, and then adjusting to be in line with that. And long term, yes, you will still be able to eat chocolate. You'll still be able to have sweets. You'll still be able to have dessert. I had someone work with me towards the end of last year, towards the end of 2023, and she was very annoyed because of the number of calories that I'd given her. So she was used to having dessert after every meal. right? Oh, no, pudding, sorry, she called it pudding. She had an almost childlike approach to it, in the sense that it was something that had stemmed from childhood. I always have pudding after a meal, and there was no come or go on it. Like, it was, I always have pudding. And I kind of said, after every meal, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, yes, I always have a pudding. It's how I've always done it. I'm like, yeah, but you're also 17 stone. This is a weight that you don't want to be. You've told me you want to be 12 stone. So how do you see having pudding after every meal aligning with this 12 stone version of yourself that you want to be? And there was quite a lot of difficult back and forth about it, because she was determined. I tried to explain that if every single one of your meals is going to be a 2-course meal, then you're never going to get to 12 stone. For you to be able to have pudding after every meal, you're going to have to massively adjust the size of your meals to account for it. Your pudding is essentially going to have to be half of your meal. So your portion sizes are going to have to get much smaller. But then I'll be really hungry. How am I going to handle all this hunger? Like, well, you're going to handle it by making an adjustment to this expectation that you're going to have dessert after every meal. And it was very challenging. And she ultimately left because I told her things that she didn't want to hear. But if I told everybody what they wanted to hear, very few of them would actually reach their goals. There are times where you have to, where you can tell people what they want to hear, but also make it kind of have a benefit to their progress. And then there are times where you have to say, look, what you want, you can't achieve, right? You cannot be 12 stone while holding on to all your 17 stone habits. You cannot make every single meal a 2-course meal and expect your weight to come down by 5 stones. I don't know how I got onto that tangent there. I've completely lost the thread of that. But yeah, sorry, I think it was the kind of multiple. Yeah, the problem is that people want to do these things multiple times per day. They want, or in this case, that person wanted to eat their breakfast, then have yogurt, or like a fruit corner type thing it was. They wanted to have their lunch, then have some cake. They wanted to have their supper, then have some cake and custard or some ice cream. You can't have 2 courses at every single meal, but also maintain a healthy weight, unless your meals are small and you do absolutely zero eating in between, in which case maybe you could get away with it. But yeah, in an ideal world, we want to limit the amount of non-hunger related eating that we do, but we don't want to limit it in a restrictive sense. Like, I am only going to let myself eat twice today when it's non-hunger related. That's a horrible way to live. That's a restrictive way to live. It should be, I have got to a point now where I understand that the weight I am at the moment is related to the way that I eat at the moment. And the way that I'm eating at the moment is breakfast, lunch, dinner, morning snack, afternoon snack, and then eating for an hour in front of the TV at night, and also picking at things in between and doing this and that and the next thing. So I now understand that for me to become a lighter, healthier, whatever specific to the goals that you have for yourself, version of myself, these are the things that are going to have to change. I can't have pudding after every single meal. I can't be eating outside of hunger multiple times per day. These things are all aligned with the version of myself that I don't want to be. And then it's, well, what does the version of me, what does the 12 stone version of me want to do, or the 10 stone version, or the 9 stone version? Here's a great question to ask, right? How does the goal version of me live? What do they do? What kind of foods do they eat? Do they eat fruits and vegetables? How many takeaways do they get? How many times do they eat out? How many meals do they have per day? What time do they go to bed at? What time do they get up in the morning? What do they do with their free time? How much scrolling do they do? And then it's about bringing the current version of you in line with the goal version of you. Because the more you bring in line with the goal version of you, and this is similar to what I said about the people that I've worked with in the past, I think I said this in the last episode, where, they reached a point where I just said to them, look, you are already the goal version of yourself. Your weight's now just coming down to meet you. All we're waiting for is the time to go by for the weight to come down to get to where it's going to go. The more you start living like the goal version of yourself, the more your weight will start to come down naturally, without restriction, without holding yourself back, without watching what you eat. Because you're not watching what you eat. You're choosing to be different. It's not, I can't have that. I better not eat that chocolate. I can't have those cakes. It's, I don't want to do that thing. I'm not going to make that choice, because that choice is aligned with the person that I don't want to be anymore. In the same way that I don't want to eat takeaways 3 and 4 times per week. I don't want to eat crisps and chocolate and stuff from a vending machine multiple times per day, because that's what 14.5 stone version of me did. And I didn't like living like that. I did for a while, but then it got to a point where I realized I didn't want to live like that anymore. And that's why the choices are different. So dieting is something people do from a place of restriction. If you come at dieting from a place of restriction, from a place of holding yourself back, constantly having to exert control over yourself, thinking that you need willpower, then you're never going to lose weight for very long. You might get to a goal weight, but you're not going to stay there, because you've not become the goal version of yourself. You're still the person that wants to do all these other things. You've just gotten very good for a while at holding yourself back from doing them. And if that's the way you're approaching your weight, then you're always going to end up back to where you were, because you can only hold yourself back for so long. So hunger. Yeah. So bringing it back to wrap it up. When it comes to hunger, right? When you are making non-hunger related choices, get into the habit of asking yourself the question, what is the purpose of this choice? What am I using this food for? Why am I about to eat these crisps? What am I using these crisps for? I am using these crisps to pass some time, to cope with this difficult situation, to respond to my stress, to whatever it is, and start learning more about yourself. That's mostly what my job is with the people I work with inside the Monroe Method, is helping them learn about themselves. What most people don't know why they're doing what they're doing. They have a vague idea of why, but they don't understand truly why. Only once you understand why you're doing something can you ever hope to change it for any length of time. Anyway, that is enough ramblings from me today. I will catch up with you next time.